Here except Sergeant, who's not feeling very well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
It's okay with that? Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Levari. I work for the Vineland Police Department, and I am the newest member of our traffic safety unit. Part of our traffic safety unit, conduct a lot of motor vehicle stops, crash investigations. I'm on the streets a lot, and today I'm going to give you a pretty in-depth talk about traffic signals. Something that's very near and dear to my heart. I deal with it often. I'm sure many of you have dealt with it all day, every day in your own cities and your own towns. You're probably even getting here today. So our basic traffic signal, we've all seen it. 3 colors on there. You might be asking, where did this come from? When did this start? Well, believe it or not, it's actually the first traffic signal was created and invented in the mid-1800s. It was actually not even for motor vehicles. It was, believe it or not, for horse and buggies to have them control at intersections. You can imagine in some of these random towns, these horse and buggy drivers or people just riding horses just going crazy, driving all over the place, riding the carriages into each other. I mean, crashes probably were pretty crazy back in the day with horses running around, and who knows where they ended up. So the first traffic signal was just red and green. It was actually controlled by a police officer that would stand in the street. You might have seen some of the old videos, old pictures that they show from an actual person standing there and changing the light. Well, in the 1800s, they didn't have electric, so they ran them off of gas. So there was a gas lamp for red and a gas lamp for green. So those lights were controlled by the officer that was standing there at the intersection, would make the decision on his own on how to control it. The first electric traffic signal actually came about in Cleveland, Ohio in 1914. A little bit later, they tried to develop on how it was actually going to work and how it could be controlled easier to make traffic flow easier and smoother. So in the beginning, it was still controlled by a traffic officer that will be there and changing the light from red to green. And they developed a timer system for it, where it would just change automatically. Now, when the light would change, there was no heads up on it. It would just change from green to red. So you can imagine if you're driving your horse and buggy, or you're driving your new electric car or a little gas-powered car from way back in the day, and you're cruising down the street and you see a green light, you're going a whole 15 miles an hour, and it just changes to red, and the other side just changes to green, probably cause some serious crashes. So a yellow light was developed in Detroit in 1920, so a few years after this electric traffic light actually came to be. So the yellow at least had a little bit of a timer to give you a heads up. Right before they came out with this yellow light, they were actually using buzzers, believe it or not. So it was kind of an annoying buzz that you would hear at these intersections when the light was going to change, give you a heads up on when it was going to happen. Probably a little bit annoying for everybody in that area, but it worked out well for the time. In the 1930s, they developed a new system to actually have the lights change without having somebody stand there or on a timer. So they put actually a microphone, they built a microphone system into the traffic lights. So when you were stopped at an intersection, you would honk your horn and you would wait for the light to change. And you can imagine how that would kind of sound in some modern cities nowadays with everybody honking from both ways. You have people waiting for the red light, of course they're honking, they're waiting to go, and the people with the green light are trying to get through, so maybe they're honking too. Everybody's just going back and forth. Probably sounded pretty chaotic in larger cities. And you can imagine the people that live around those areas probably didn't like it too much either. So it was a good thing it was developed to change that, some new sensors. So that's my next part here. I'm going to go into traffic light sensors. Sure, all of you have been in an intersection where you're waiting there for a long time, trying to figure out what is going on with this. Why am I sitting here for a whole minute and there's no traffic coming the opposite direction? Not every intersection is going to be controlled by an actual sensor. But I'm going to show you a real quick diagram. You'll have to bear with me on my third grader drawing skills. So there's 2 types that we have. Okay, this would be a camera. So Some of the intersections actually still have lights like that in vinyl. For some reason you have them left to right. So some of the modern systems will have a camera system on top of the light, and a lot of intersections, let's say this is an intersection right here, and there's a traffic light in the middle, and here's your stop line for your intersection. Well, there's an interesting technology that some scientists ended up creating based off of electromagnetic pulses, and it's called inductive loop. So it kind of sounds almost like it's generating electricity into there, but it's a little bit different system. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on that. So an inductive loop was actually into the ground. It's buried in the asphalt. So initially they would pave the road, the intersection. They would trench out and dig out a hole where they could run this loop along with the wires that would go to a control box on the side. So they would, like I said, they would dig out a hole in here, and they would run an inductive loop wiring system. This wiring system was controlled by this computer system or the sensor box, and the sensor box would actually send out a specific frequency that would go through the wire, and that would actually create an electromagnetic pulse in it. So it wasn't just electricity, it was a certain frequency. So this electromagnetic pulse would be in here, and electromagnetics are affected by steel. So any kind of metal that has iron in it will really affect it. Does anybody ride motorcycles in here? Have you ever been to an intersection on your motorcycle, and maybe you've seen these inductive loops, sensors in the roadway, and you stop on top of it, and you're thinking the light's going to change, and nothing happens. It's almost like you're sitting there for a long time. You ever had that happen? I'm sorry?
Done it before.
Done it before? Because of the amount of steel that are on a lot of these motorcycles, a lot of them are made of, I guess, a lot of aluminum, plastics. There's not a lot of steel, even on the motor. It's not enough to change the electromagnetic pulse that's going on inside there, and the field that's going on inside there, to interrupt it, to tell this sensor to change. So there's good and bad to the system that's in the ground, this loop, inductive loop we call it. The second one I want to talk about is the camera system. So that's more modern. That's something that we deal with on a lot of intersections that are very busy or have multiple lanes. So if you have a left turn lane, there might be a camera system that's on top of the light standard that's shining at this intersection in each direction, and it's going to actually have a computer that will be analyzing with the software to see what's coming through the camera and to pick up where there's cars at. So it can tell if there's a left turn lane, there's a vehicle in there, or if just regular traffic's building up in the normal straight lanes, it can actually change the time that allows the traffic to flow through there. So it kind of helps out a little bit in a flow of traffic and make it more efficient, along with being able to see when people are in different lanes. There's disadvantages to the camera system. You can imagine if it snows or there's rain going on, or I don't know, dust storms out in the middle of nowhere. They're going to get in front of the camera, and it's not going to be able to sense what's going on. It's going to block it. So you might be sitting there for a long time waiting for this thing to go. You're thinking, okay, this works every other day. There's a snowstorm going on, and you're going to be sitting there for a lot longer. So those are the circumstances that might affect it. It could also get dirty. You might have a malfunction, and it won't work at all. And hopefully you can make a right on red and continue on your way right back around. All right, so as far as the video detection, that's kind of where we're at as modern technology. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's going to happen in the future? What better technology could they possibly come out with that can improve traffic flow? Well, there's some interesting information coming out from car makers, specifically ones that create autonomous vehicles. You've heard about these? You guys heard about those? Vehicles that drive themselves, communicate with each other. They set it up where they're pretty much become a part of their own network. these vehicles can communicate with each other and work out what's going to happen in front of them or what's going to happen around them. So it's pretty interesting that these car makers are thinking in the future that they're not going to need to use traffic lights as much, and possibly vehicles won't even need to stop anymore at intersections. If you think about it, with two vehicles that are driving, they know what the other speed's doing, they can adjust the speed, so the one's coming through the intersection up ahead, this one can slow down, let the other one go through, and then your vehicle will continue right on, and you won't have to even pay attention. You'll be in the back playing on Facebook or watching YouTube or whatever you're going to do in the back of your vehicle when your car is driving itself. So the future, a lot of things are up in the air. Obviously, that's not going to be allowed for a long time. We still have regular vehicles that are driving. People riding motorcycles, I don't know if they're going to be autonomous either. I think I kind of take away from the fun of it. But so we're not sure how that's going to work out in the future with that. As far as later on with the autonomous vehicles, when we no longer have an interaction with them, our computers are going to be hooked up into a network where they're going to be able to view cameras that are in the town. So it might be around the corner, it might be on a building somewhere, and it's actually going to be able to know what's going to happen around the corner. You can imagine how good that will really work out for crashes and things that we deal with often. If the vehicle that's driving knows that there's a pedestrian that's crossing the street up around the corner, or there's a crash way ahead, or there's kids getting off of a bus, your vehicle will already know that, and it'll slow down, and it'll account for it, and our efficiency and the smoothness of all our driving really will step up, and it's going to be a pretty amazing time. So there's always a possibility in the future that we don't need traffic lights at all, and traffic will be a lot quicker, traveling by car will be a lot different in the future. So those are the main types of our intersections, how they give you a little bit of history on how they worked way back in the day. A good thing that we don't have these lamps that are somebody standing out there. You can imagine that wouldn't be that fun of a job. Probably be for community policing out there, changing the light. I'll give you an interesting tidbit. In our police department in Vineland, we have a very old building. I don't know, it's from the 50s or 60s. The thing's old. At our front desk, we actually have it's a bunch of buttons that are on there based off of different intersections. And they're not functioning any longer, but I've heard stories on how it actually was used and how it worked. And I guess the information would come in from the officers on the street on our main street, Landis Avenue, and it would notify the person at the front desk, and they would hit the button, and it would change the light at that intersection. So I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. That would be fun. So I also went over a little bit how these systems work, the inductive loop, the camera systems that are on the top of the light, things that help us out, control the flow of traffic and make it a little bit smoother for us. I've also went over a little bit of the possibility of what could happen in the future. We don't really know, right? We don't know what could happen in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but just know that change is coming. These autonomous vehicles are going to continue changing, and they're going to continue updating, and they're going to continue loading more and more software and sensors, and the future is going to be a lot safer than what we have today. I do have a joke. I do want to finish this with a joke. So my 11-year-old daughter, I was going over this talk with her last night, and she told me a pretty good joke. Okay? I think you guys are all going to laugh really hard on this. It's a really good joke. So she told me, she said, "What is the only time that you go on red and you stop on green?" And she said, "When you're eating watermelon." So think about it. Thank you all. That's very good. Thank you very much. All right, I'm ready to take some really good questions. Anybody has on specifics? Oh yes, sir. You're in the back.
Do you know who was the first inventor of the electric stop lamp?
I don't have that information. I know it was created in Cleveland, Ohio.
It's Garrett Morgan.
Garrett Morgan? Okay.
Black History fact.
I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna keep that. But thanks for the question.
Can you tell me if Butler and Delsey Drive is on a sensor or a timer?
Most of the newer, that's a newer intersection, most of them are going to be on timers, at least in Vineland, the new intersections that I've seen. That one actually has a camera.
Time. Justin,
Sir,
you stood up there, you took command of the class. You knew your subject matter. You didn't even go and look at a note on the podium until about 13 and a half minutes in. You knew exactly what you were talking about. You picked a topic I didn't know anything about, and I was very interested in hearing it.
thank you.
And I think everyone else, did too.
I can
It
tell
was,
very much.
it was interesting. As you went on, you did great, and you didn't do your first or ah until about 13 minutes gone. So that was the midnight thing. Easy to follow. Your lesson plan was good. You're not this good, Justin, just so you know, but you did a great job.
I'm sorry?